We don't want this to feel like a formal webinar. This presentation is called Conversations for a reason. So we want you to participate in this conversation with our experts. So again, send those questions my way via the chat box. We welcome any and all questions you have. We will do our best to answer all of the questions, but if we run out of time, the best way to learn more is to visit our website at lemurreserve.org. With all of the technical stuff out of the way, now I'd like to turn your attention to our panel of experts, and I will introduce you to them one at a time, and I'll let them say a few words about themselves, and then we'll be happy to start taking some questions. So if you turn your attention to our panel of experts, first, we have Dr. Erik Patel, and he is our Conservation and Research Director here at the Lemur Conservation Foundation. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I've been fortunate to be part of the LCF family for almost 10 years now on their Scientific Advisory Council. I've been working full-time here in Florida and in Madagascar for them for about 4 years. I also serve as the Madagascar Country Field Representative for Seacology, an environmental organization based in Berkeley, California.
Great, thank you, Erik. And in the middle, we have Caitlyn Kenny, who is our Curator of Primates here at LCF.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Caitlyn. I have a degree in Conservation and Wildlife Management from Delaware Valley University, and I'm originally from North Attleboro, Massachusetts. I started here at LCF in February of 2014, actually as an intern, and I've been here ever since, and I've worked my way up, and I'm now the curator. And in addition to my curator duties, I also am the Ringtail Lemur stud bookkeeper for AZA, and I work closely with the PTAG, which is the Prosimian Taxon Advisory Group, to kind of coordinate and manage all of the lemur transfers around the country within the scope of AZA.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, we have Lauren Arshakuni, who is our Senior Keeper here at LCF.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I've been at LCF for about 3.5 years. I started out as an intern and worked my way up. I have a degree in anthropology from Sonoma State University in California. Hi, Dr. Jaffe. But my concentration was basically in primatology, and I did some internships at the Oakland Zoo, and then I found the internship at LCF, and I've been here ever since, and I love everything about it.
Great. So we are so excited to have this panel with us here today. And again, for those of you just joining us, I want to remind you that we are accepting questions in the chat box. All you have to do is open up that chat box and send us any questions you might have. So to get started today, we're going to go ahead and ask our panel, of all the endangered animals you could help, why lemurs? You want to start us off, Erik?
Sure. Lemurs are both extremely unique and extremely rare. Among primates, they're the only female-dominant primates. Not all of them, but most of the species are female-dominant. They also have an unusually strict reproductive season. Most lemurs in the wild mate on one day in the whole year, and that's unusual for primates. Female estrus is typically just a 24-hour period of time, a single day each year. Also, lemurs have some unusual activity budgets. Some lemur species, like the yew lemurs, the brown lemurs, are chithemeral. That means that they're active both in the day and the night. They're neither nocturnal nor diurnal, they're chithemeral, and that's unusual. As far as their rarity, they're amongst the rarest animals now in the world. 95% of the over 100 lemur species are currently threatened with extinction, according to the IUCN.
Anything to add, Caitlyn or Lauren?
I guess one thing is, lemurs are prosimians and they are primates. And if you kind of trace back our ancestors, they are our most distant related ancestors. So in studying lemurs, you're essentially studying where humans came from. So that's another reason why they're so important and so interesting to when you think about it in that context. Anything to add?
I think they pretty much said everything.
Great. So we've got some questions rolling in. This one is from Michael. Michael asks, why is AZA so important? Do you want to tackle that one first, Caitlyn?
Sure. So AZA, for anybody who doesn't know, is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And they are just, I guess maybe a governing body would be a way to describe it. That might not be the right phrase, but they're an organization within the US primarily, and they have set standards that organizations need to meet in order to be accredited by AZA. So those kind of run the gamut of animal welfare, nutrition, healthcare, also conservation projects. So LCF is an AZA certified related facility, which is basically the same as being accredited, except we're not open to the public, so it has a slightly different title. And so we have to meet all of those same standards that a lot of your major zoos across the country have to meet as well. You know, places like the Bronx Zoo and I don't know, I mean, anywhere across the country. What else? Disney's Animal Kingdom, but also probably your small local zoo like Cape May County Zoo in New Jersey, or you know, there's a wide range of AZA institutions, and it really just means that you're giving your animals the best standard of care.
Great. So we have another question here, and I'm going to direct this one to Lauren. So Karen asks, what is something you would like people to know about lemurs or lemur conservation?
Awesome. Lemurs all have their own personalities, so working with them is very unique. It's also very important to observe them as well. They're very strong little guys. They can hide a lot of things, so you might not notice things that could be wrong with them. But lemurs, it's important for people to know that although they are cute, they are becoming, they're threatened and they're going to go extinct if, you know, things continue the way that they're going. So I think it's important for people to know that, you know, just because they're one species of primate, they are just as important as great apes and other primates. Yeah.
Anything else you guys would like to add? Something you want people to know about lemurs or lemur conservation?
Well, I just have a couple of fun facts that popped to mind. In terms of lemur anatomy, just one of the things that came to mind. Lemurs are really cool. They have what's called a tooth comb. So that means that the front 6 teeth on their bottom jaw have actually evolved and merged into essentially a comb. So they use that to groom themselves and groom each other, and it's a form of social bonding. It could actually be used in kind of a negative, aggressive sense as well, which is really interesting. And then another cool kind of mouth dental anatomy is they actually have 2 tongues, which people are always really surprised to hear. So they have their primary tongue, like you and I have, and then they actually have another tongue under that. It's called a sublingua. And it's thought that that is used to help clean out that tooth comb of any debris and hair that gets stuck in it.
Great. So we've got another question here, and this one is probably best suited for Erik. So this question is from Natalie. Why are red ruffed lemurs only found in the rainforest on Moshua Peninsula, while the black and white ruffs can be found all along the eastern coastal forests of Madagascar?
Is this from Professor Natalie? Yes. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. So why are red ruffed lemurs only found in the rainforest on Moshua Peninsula, while the black and white ruffed lemurs can be found all along the eastern coastal forests of Madagascar?
That's a fascinating biogeographic question. I guess the question is, were they like that prior to human arrival, or is that a consequence of, you know, anthropogenic change? Number one. Number two, certainly Moshua is a unique. Moshua is in the northeast of Madagascar, and it's a large peninsula, and it's a lowland, very humid, very wet rainforest. So it's possible that there are some unique habitat preferences that red ruffed lemurs have, such as the warmer climate in the northeast. The heaviest rainfall, perhaps in all of Madagascar, occurs in the Moshua Peninsula, at least 5-6 meters of rain a year. Some of those things, some of those unique habitat preferences may be reasons why we see those biogeographic differences, but I don't really know the answer to that.
And that, that's important to know. We are the panel of experts, but even the experts don't know everything. There is a lot to know about lemurs and Madagascar, and a lot that we're still discovering. So sometimes we may not have all the answers. So let's see here. So this is for Caitlyn and Lauren. For students who are interested in working with primates, could you guys talk a little more about how you got involved with LCF out of college and what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I'll go first. I graduated in 2016, and my last semester of senior year, my professor, Dr. Jaffe, mentioned that Oakland Zoo is doing internships. So I had no idea, what a zookeeper really did. So I decided to apply, and I was lucky enough to get the internship at Oakland Zoo. And my first day, I instantly knew this is what I want to do. I always wanted to work with animals, but I didn't really want to do research. I just felt like that was not the field for me. So working at the Oakland Zoo, I learned so much about zoos. And then when I got my internship at LCF, I realized primates have always been my passion, and working with one specific primate species, I decided this is kind of where I want to focus on. These lemurs need everybody's help. This is perfect for me. But getting into the field it's very different. Zookeeping is more than just one job. You have 5 jobs in one. You do maintenance, you do cleaning, you do feeding, you do nutrition prep, you do vet stuff. It's just a whole bunch in one. But basically, if you're interested, I would say try and volunteer, try and get an internship, because it might not be the field for you. You really won't know unless you get some experience. But yeah.
So I have a fairly similar experience. Where I went to school, we actually were required to put in professional hours as part of our program before we could graduate. So I too did an internship. I interned with a small local zoo, Buttonwood Park Zoo up in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I worked in the North America West section. At the time that I was there, it was all native North American species, and then a couple of elephants who had been there for several decades. And I was lucky enough to get to work with the elephants a little bit. And then the species that I primarily worked with were bison and North American cat species. So cougars, bobcats, and lynx. So after that internship, I was really thinking I was going to go into cats. And I've always loved cats. I have cats at home. So that was kind of where I was thinking I was going to go. But after that, applying to more positions, it is a really competitive field. And I wasn't getting the ones I was looking for, so I started expanding out. And I applied to this one here at LCF and got it. And I've been here ever since. I haven't left. I love the lemurs, and I love everything that we do here. Like Lauren said, it's not just cleaning up poop. There's a lot more involved to it. The diet, the maintenance, there's enrichment, there's animal welfare that you have to think about. There's animal training if you're really interested in training, and Katie might have more information on that since that was what her degree is in. But more than just the animal side, even if you're interested in the field and maybe you do an internship and maybe the actual animal care isn't for you, there are other aspects that you could go into. There is nutrition. Some of these larger zoos, you could be just a commissary worker and just take care of that nutrition side, which is really important. Or there's actually a position called a registrar where all you do primarily is record keeping. You're still working at the zoo, you're still helping the animals, but you're working in normally an office setting. Now here at LCF, as a really small institution, those jobs for us are usually combined into one. So Lauren gets to do all sides of that animal care side. I coordinate all of that, and then I also do registrar duties. I coordinate with our veterinarian on any kind of medical aspects. So there's a lot more spots in animal care than just dealing with the actual animals. You can help them in a less direct way.
Also to add, if you are applying for positions and you're not getting what you want, just keep applying. Don't give up. Honestly, there's so many positions out there, and you never know. You might get, like, waiting for a long time, you might get the one you really were meant to have. So.
Great, thank you guys. Is there anything you want to add about the conservation side of how you got into the field, Erik?
Sure. Let's see, I got interested in primates because I went to India after college, and I saw a lot of monkeys roaming wild in the streets of India, and I thought they were really interesting. And I came back from that, and that's how I got interested in primates. I got interested in lemurs because I was lucky enough to volunteer for a research opportunity at Ranamafana National Park, where Professor Patricia Wright has a long-term presence, a research presence, and a conservation presence. It's an outstanding training facility. And I volunteered to collect fecal samples for another grad student for 4 months, paid my own way. And I found working there was just fantastic. The nicest people I'd ever met in the world. I found it easier traveling than in India, where I had been, and just an absurd number of primates. I mean, are you kidding me? At least 117 species of primates on a single island in 5 different families. That is truly exceptional.
Great, thank you. So we've got a fun question here from Judy and Mike. And I guess I'll let all 3 of you answer this. Do you have any favorite stories about the lemurs you work with and their adorable, or notably not adorable, antics?
What to say? That might take me a second.
Okay, I have one.
Okay.
So all of our lemurs react to enrichment differently, but we had a specific lemur named Pablo, a mongoose lemur. And so we once in a while will give out dilute juice as enrichment in little bowls, and it keeps them hydrated. You know, it's a nice little fun treat. And instead of drinking just out of the bowl like any normal pet would, or, you know, animal, Pablo would like to stick his hand into the bowl and then lick his hand. And he was the only one I've ever seen do this. And every time he got a juice bowl, he would do it. So that's my fun story, I guess.
Maybe I'll go towards the other end, the aggravating end. So I guess just, you know, here at LCF, we have our free range forest habitats, and our animals have 24/7 access to the habitat and then also to their shelters, so they can choose where they want to be. Well, in the wintertime, when it's colder, you know, lemurs they sunbathe, and they're going to do it first thing in the morning when the sun's rising to warm up. But we feed them in the morning, and as I started in February, like I said, so I started in winter time. So when I was learning how to work routine and how to work with these animals, this was their most stubborn time of year, and they just sit in the trees and sun and ignore you for hours. They won't come down, and you have to adapt your day around them and say, okay, you know, I'm going to try for another 5 minutes, and if they don't come down, I'm going to go do something else, and then I'll come back in 20 minutes and try again. And then at some point they eventually do. They're warm enough, and they just, you know, they do have an expression, and it's just kind of a, okay, okay, I'll eat now.
Do you have, I know Erik has done some extensive work in Madagascar, and he's had, you know, the absolute pleasure of seeing lemurs in their native habitat. Do you have any notable stories that come to mind about seeing these creatures in the wild?
There's one story which we really like to tell. It was, we noticed that our adult female, her name was AF. She was a silky Safaka lemur living in Maro Jeji National Park in the Northeast. And usually they have one infant every 2 years. But we noticed that this adult female was carrying 2 infants, and they were both nursing at the same time. And one of them was not her own. And that was a remarkable behavior called Aloe Nursing. It's been seldom described in primates. Well, maybe a dozen or 15 species of primates and a handful of lemur species Aloe nurse, but it had not been previously described in Cephacus. And we were just lucky to be there during that time where we could observe one adult female giving milk to a female that was to an infant that was not her own. It was the offspring of another adult female in the group and her own infant at the same time. And that was pretty cool. And I think the reason that happened is the other mother was kind of she was either a bad mother or she was promoting early infant independence because her style of parenting was very different from the older mother. So the baby would scream all the time on the younger mother, and the older mother just kind of scooped her up. And that's how it happened.
Very interesting.
That being said, we've seen very similar things here in the lemurs that we have here where, not silkies though, because obviously they're not in captivity, but in our ringtail lemurs, we have twin sisters who several years ago were both breeding and had infants. And the dominant female of the group is very much oh, you got off? Okay, that means you're independent now, bye. Where her twin sister is a lot more like, oh, okay, come on, like I've got a little more room on my back, you can ride me. So it's
wow.
It's really interesting to see maternal care for sure.
Yeah.
This is great. So this segues into our next question here. Rebecca asks, what lemur species do you take care of?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So here in Myakka right now, we have 5 different species. We have the ring-tailed lemurs, red ruffed lemurs, and then common brown lemurs, collared brown lemurs, and mongoose lemurs. Until a few months ago, we did also have a Stanford's lemur in our population, and he unfortunately passed away. He was the last of his species in a managed population. So we're very sad, and we'd miss him every day. He's actually on my shirt. That is a kutu, and yes, we very much miss him. But as of right now, we have the 5 species here at our Florida reserve, and then in Madagascar.
Yeah, there are about 11 lemur species in Marojeji and Anjanahardi Sud National Park.
Great. All right. So this next question, I'm actually interested in knowing the answer as well. Have any of your staff met Allison Jolly? Her work with the lemurs looks amazing, and she, of course, authored the Aku series books, which LCF publishes. Did any of you get the chance to meet Dr. Jolly?
I feel very privileged to have met her at one of the primate meetings, the International Primatological Society meeting. Maybe it was in Uganda or the one after that. But I was just always so impressed how sharp she was as a woman in her, at that time, mid-70s. I mean, she was razor sharp and legitimately brilliant. And you could tell that just by interacting with her just for 10 minutes, the breadth of her knowledge and also the caring that she had for the people of Madagascar, the lemurs of Madagascar, and the science behind it as well. So a real legend and a real one-of-a-kind kind of a person.
Great. This question is from Rio. How did you choose the species that you are currently working with here in Florida?
That's a great question. So originally when LCF was founded, the scientists that were involved really recommended working with the U lemurs, the brown lemurs, because the thought was if any of the lemurs are going to survive, it's going to be the brown lemurs because they're a little more adaptable than those really specialized species. The only problem with that is U lemurs do not get along with other U lemurs. So in order to have larger numbers of U lemurs and to have free-ranging lemur groups, we really had to diversify. So we've held more species than the 5 that we currently have right now. But over the years, we've kind of narrowed down the species that we are focusing on. So right now we have 4 key species that we are part of SSP, which is Species Survival Plan breeding programs. So those are the ringtails, red ruffs, collared browns, and the mongoose. And then we do hold a family group of common brown lemurs. There is possibility in the future that we expand to additional species. It's not within the next couple of years in our plans, but we're always happy at the thought of adding more species and being able to work with more individuals. But that's how we got our current species.
Great, great. So this is a really interesting question, especially since we now know that 98% of lemurs are threatened with extinction. It's pretty shocking, and it's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom of things. So Matthew has asked, what conservation successes have recently occurred in Madagascar, and what further needs to be done in the next 10 years to protect lemurs and their biodiversity on the island?
That's a great question. Well, there have been a lot of successes despite the growing challenges. If we look now, there are the number of protected areas, and the area that is protected in Madagascar has increased considerably. We have a number of long-term research centers, the German Primate Center on the west coast and near Karindi. Of course, Centre Valbio at Ranamafana National Park that I already mentioned. A lot of those research centers are long-term conservation centers as well. We've seen a lot more NGOs sprout up. Our organization is an example. 4 years ago, we didn't have a big presence in the Northeast, but LCF now has a staffed office in the Northeast, in Sambava, that I manage, and we have a lot of nice programs there as well. What else can I say? We face increasing challenges, but also a lot of positives. Madagascar has a real opportunity for tourism. Tourism is actually one of the main goals of the quote-unquote Lemur Action Plan. It's pretty easy to see lemurs in the wild. Lemurs tend to habituate quicker to people than other types of primates. They don't run away as quick. It's easier to see a lot of animals in Madagascar than it is in other parts of the world. You can go into a national park in Madagascar and you can see 5 different species of lemurs, 5 different species of chameleons, a bunch of birds, and a lot of interesting insects and remarkable plant diversity all in a day. You can't do that everywhere in the world. And it's also a very safe place for foreigners. They like Americans in Madagascar. That's another benefit too. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. So this question, I guess, is geared. We're going to start with Lauren. We have a question. Do lemurs make good pets? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Lemurs never make appropriate pets. Having worked with lemurs extensively here at LCF, can you guys give us kind of the perspective of why they don't make good pets?
We actually have a couple of ex-pets here at LCF. We got them a couple years ago, but I work with them and they are protected contact, which means we cannot go inside an enclosure or room with them. There are shift doors that we manage and we double check everything. Just because primates are small, growing up hand reared by humans, it's very different than if they were raised by their mothers. So they develop different behaviors. So our primates, or our lemurs here that are ex-pets, are extremely aggressive. They show a lot of stereotypic behaviors, one being yawning and teeth chattering. Our male is our most aggressive lemur that we have. And seeing those behaviors is just a great way to tell people that once they grow up and they're no longer babies and cute anymore, they're going to develop similar behaviors. And we do get calls all the time from people who do have lemurs that have grown up and are now becoming aggressive towards them. So although they are cute, they do not make great pets. I clean up after all the lemurs. You do not want them. They smell.
go along with that last thing you just said, they do smell a little bit. But one of the behaviors that's very key to lemurs is scent communication. They have wet noses like dogs, and scent communication is really big for them. And they actually have what's called an anogenital scent gland. And what they do is they rub their butts on everything to scent mark. And I don't know about you, but I don't want that in my house. So that's just one way to kind of turn people off from it. But on the other end of things, seeing lemurs in kind of a private setting, in a home or something, it leads people to believe that they're not as endangered and threatened in the wild as they are. Seeing them in a house, they just seem like, a pet, like they're kind of common, and they're really not. They are endangered species. Ringtails are classified as endangered. Another popular species in the pet trade are ruffed lemurs. Both species of ruffed lemurs are critically endangered in the wild. They're facing a lot of threats. You just want, we want people to realize that they are facing a lot of threats in the wild, and that they are still primates, they are still wild animals, and they really don't belong in people's homes.
Erik, do you see pet lemurs in Madagascar at all?
Yeah, unfortunately we do. And Dr. Kim Reuter and Dr. Marnie Lafleur have really done a lot of work on pet lemurs in Madagascar. I think Kim's PhD dissertation, she determined that there were at least 28,000 roughly pet lemurs in Madagascar by their estimate, so quite a lot. Fortunately, those are, in general, it's not the rarest of the rare that are kept as pets in Madagascar. It tends to be more of the endangered or near threatened species, but that's changing. There certainly are some sifakas that are in captivity in Madagascar at hotels and things like that. There's a hotel that has some injury, and they don't live long in captivity. That's the take-home message. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just one more thing to add, since they are primates, they can catch, common colds or other illnesses. So them being in contact with humans, it's pretty important that, we're not close with the lemurs so that they can't catch anything. But them being in a household like that, they can get sick, and there aren't a lot of vets that take care of lemurs. So then what are you going to do then? So it's just really important that primates do not make good pets in that sense as well.
Great, thank you so much, guys. We have another great question from Elizabeth. She asks, what are some examples of similar behaviors between lemurs and humans? You guys noticed anything that really reminds you of yourselves?
One thing that I love are their vocalizations. So they do vocalize a lot. They make a lot of noise, and I don't know the number of ringtail vocalizations.
Maybe 24.
Yeah. They make a wide variety of noises, and they have different noises for different things. And the ringtails in particular are even infants have a certain number of noises that only infants make. And maybe they only make them to their mothers versus the other individuals in the group. So I really like watching the family interactions and hearing those vocalizations, because you really start to learn oh, Dad is really annoyed with his son right now, and that is him criticizing son for jumping on his head, kind of thing. And you really get that family dynamic out of their vocalizations, and I always I'm really interested in that.
They're a lot more social and communicative than you might expect. People think of them as being so different from monkeys and apes, but if you watch a large group of ringtail lemurs, you'll be surprised how sophisticated the social dynamics can be.
Great. All right. So our next question, with lemurs being endemic to Madagascar, what are some ways that we can help here in the United States or in other countries to help conservation efforts? How do we help lemurs?
Well, there's a variety of ways you can help lemurs. Number one would be just contributing to an organization that helps protect lemurs, whether that's in a monetary sense or maybe you volunteer, or as part of our World Lemur Festival event, we had an art contest. And even just getting your art and that imagery out there, it makes people think about conservation and just the natural world. So there's all sorts of ways that you can help contribute to conservation and conservation organizations in that way.
Yeah, anything really does help. I know some people don't like to just donate money, but we do have an Amazon wish list, and then you can actually purchase certain items, and then you'll know what your money goes towards. But ultimately, anything and everything, volunteering your time is an awesome opportunity to help.
Some other options are just kind of other ways to just help the environment. Be aware of water usage and your plastic usage and all of that, because ultimately the environment across the world affects everywhere. So what you can do to help your local environment will help the global environment as well.
Great. Yeah. Anything to add?
Visit Madagascar. They need more tourism. It's a nice place to visit. Generates income for the local economy. Support AZA institutions, and don't have a pet lemur.
Perfect. That's probably the best thing you can do, is not own a lemur. So that actually segues really nicely into our next question here from Karen. Is there a good trip outfitter choice to ensure conscientious travel that helps and doesn't harm the people or the fauna and flora of Madagascar?
Yeah, that's a great question. Many of the tour operators in Madagascar do a pretty good job. There are a few to look out for that might bring you to some of these, to a handful of sketchy hotels that might have a captive lemur or two, but those are few and far between. Most of the tour operators that we work with are pretty good. To name a few, ZA Tours, ZA is a really good one, based in Madagascar. They work internationally. And Rainbow Tours is outstanding. They're based in the United Kingdom. We are putting a trip together with them. They have decades of experience working in Madagascar. Derek Sherman is one of the leaders over there. There's a number of others. If you look in the Hillary Bratt Guide to Madagascar, look for the latest edition. I think it just came out this year. We actually have a little blurb in there in the Sambava section about our organization. But in the Hillary Bratt Guide to Madagascar, they do have a number of pages interspersed throughout the book that have some tour operators that they approve of, and that's a pretty good guidebook.
Great. Why are so many lemurs threatened with extinction? 98% is a big number. What is causing this crisis?
It goes back a long time. Primarily it seems to be due to extreme poverty in Madagascar. It is one of the poorest countries in the world. If you go by gross domestic product per capita, it might be about the 11th or 12th poorest country in the world, with the majority of the population surviving on a few dollars a day. So that creates pressure on the protected areas. Specifically, the main threats to lemur survival in the wild have always been slash and burn agriculture for rice, which is also known as swidden agriculture as well. This is an unsustainable form of farming that many people have few alternatives to. So this form of farming involves burning down parts of the rainforest, allowing that ash to fertilize the soil, which is often very infertile soil. And then if that cycle is repeated on the same land too frequently, the land will ultimately die. And that's what happens. Secondly, bushmeat hunting, people hunting lemurs in order to eat them in Madagascar, or bushmeat hunting, has increased in the last 20 years. When I started working in Madagascar in the year 2000, people hardly ever talked about it. It was considered more of an African problem. Monkeys get hunted in Africa. Over here, we don't really have that so much, but a lot's changed. We've had several political crises. So that is the number of political crises in Madagascar is also a clear contributor to the environmental challenges that they face. And I would also add that the unsustainable population growth in Madagascar has one of the fastest growing human populations in the world. In wealthier countries, that's not so much a problem. But when you're working in one of the poorest countries in the world, where there are 26 million people now, and the population is due to double, be over 50 million in maybe 20 years, that's a real concern as well.
Great. We have a question from one of our youngest supporters, Henry. He asks the keepers, do any of the lemurs make specific noises when the keepers are around them?
Once in a while, red ruffs, if we're hosing near them or we walk past them or something, they'll make a little grumble. Ravina, one of our red ruffs, likes to do it the most with me, but it's usually if I'm hosing and she's nearby. Not that I'm hosing her, like getting her wet or anything. It might just be the sound, but she often makes a little grumble towards me.
Some of them, one of the ones that I like is the ringtail lemurs. When we go in for feeding times, we have to, for one of our groups, we have to go out into the forest with them and lead them to their shelter. And they know when you go out there and you have that container, they know it's time for food. And they start making these really excited little chirping noises. And that's one of my favorites. I don't know that that's really because I'm there or more that I have the food, which is more likely, but that is one noise that they make that I really like, that when they do when somebody is around and not so much when we're not around.
And I know lemurs can make some pretty extensive vocalizations. Do you want to talk a little bit, Erik, about the injury?
Sure. Yeah. No, lemurs are both extremely vocal and they also scent mark a lot. So we tend to think of them as, being dependent on their nose, but they're also very communicative in the vocal domain with repertoire sizes between 10 and 25 calls per species. One of the most famous sounds that lemurs make is the song of the Indri, as they call it. The Indri is the largest of all living lemurs, and it's a big tourist attraction. Andasi Bay National Park, only maybe a 4 or 5 hour drive from Madagascar's capital, gets tens of thousands of tourists each year to go see the song of the Indri. It's an incredibly loud vocalization and a beautiful kind of whale-like call, a very tonal, periodic vocalization is how we would describe it, that has very specific notes that are organized in a particular sequence. And it is so loud you have to cover your ears. It's a call that travels up to 5 kilometers, and it is truly remarkable.
And I just want to add, if you're interested in hearing that Indri song, you can head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Lemur Conservation. And we do have videos of the Indri calling on our Facebook page. So it's definitely worth the search. Let's see here. We have another question. This one's from Carla. Are there any specific reasons for the negative taboos surrounding eyes, and how does this affect the conservation of them?
So the negative taboo surrounding eyes is that eyes are one of the most unusual lemurs. They're active in the night only, and they're these strange animals. You can Google them if you haven't seen them. There it is. That's an eye. So the negative taboo is that, which is still in place in some communities, including where we work, is that eyes are sometimes killed on sight because they're considered an omen of bad things to come. Someone you love very much may die if the eye enters your village, or depending on the local community. And we do see them strung up occasionally. And they're not eaten, just killed and strung up. So why that is, we can only speculate. But most people have speculated is, they're very unusual in their demeanor. They look nothing like any other lemur or any other animal in the world. They're creepy, they're active at night, and they have a bizarre finger that's really long and can rotate 360 degrees, which they use to dig into dead wood and grab grubs, which they then eat. They do strange things like that. They have these strange bird-like nests in the trees when they have multiple nests active at one time, and they can have very large home ranges. And they're just so different and so bizarre. We speculate that's why they're killed. We don't know.
Is there anything that LCF is doing to help mitigate some of that harm?
Yeah, so we have our Aku series of books, the primary book being Aku the Eye. And it's a series of 6 children's books, and each book is a different species. So Aku focuses on little Aku the Eye, and Aku means echo in Malagasy. And in the story, it tells his little story about how he's traveling the forest with his mom, but he wants to play. And then there's this scene here, which of course I'm not very close to the camera, but where the text is, Aku heard voices. I have come all the way from America hoping to see an eye, said one voice. Another voice said, I only came from the nearest town, but I am afraid to go out in the forest at night. I am afraid of eyes. I have heard that eyes bring very bad luck. And then what happens during the rest of the story is Aku's doing his thing and he's being playful and cute in the forest. And then at the end, it's a voice said, I'm happy I came all the way from America. Another voice said, I am happy too. I'm not afraid of that eye. Look, he was playing. So these books, or this book in particular, helps address that Fadi, and it helps give eyes it helps give people the idea that eyes are just another species. They're nothing to be afraid of. They're just a very specialized type of lemur. And it shows that growth within the book to hopefully encourage that growth in the children as well, to help them learn that they're not something to be afraid of.
Great.
And we also have a Malagasy version that is bilingual.
Perfect, thank you. Let's see here. This is also an interesting question, again from Karen, and I would love to know the answer to this. For the few lemurs that are not threatened, that 2%, what is their story? Why are they not threatened?
That's a good question. Well, let me think of the ones. So one reason is they may be very flexible in their habitat and dietary preferences. As an example, in our region, we have the northern bamboo lemur. Some bamboo lemurs are extremely rare and very specific in what they'll eat, like the greater bamboo lemur, for example. But the northern bamboo lemur, Hapolemur occidentalis, we find them in all kinds of disturbed forests. They seem to thrive. They seem to do very well in these secondary forests that have very little native vegetation. We did a study on one of them inhabiting Antanatiambo Nature Reserve. There was not one native species of bamboo in that reserve. And they were doing okay. You know, they didn't have a large group size, but they were surviving, eating invasive Chinese and Indian bamboo, eating lychee fruits and other domestic fruits. So that's one reason why some species are. Other reasons are just historical ranges. You know, if they're found near large human populations, or the silky sifaka, for example, has a high elevation preference. Silky sifaka lemurs prefer to be in elevations above 600, 650 meters away from villages. So that habitat preference protects them. That's another example.
Very interesting. All right, we have a question. Does anything other than humans eat lemurs? You want to take that one, Lauren?
We do. We have the fossa. But they are a carnivore found in Madagascar, and they are known for eating lemurs. Oh. Also, we have the white-browed owl. So aerial predators are, lemurs are often in trees or on the ground, depending on the species. And aerial predators being able to fly and having the ability to just pick them up, basically, and move them is also another predator.
And Erik, I believe there was a study recently in the area you work in Madagascar, a carnivore study. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, no, we were delighted to support the work of Dr. Zach Ferris and his student Patrick Ross, who came up and did an outstanding carnivore camera trapping study in Anjanahari Bay Sud Special Reserve, where they put out a full camera grid over at least 4 or 5 months. And we facilitated that, and they had some tremendous results. We found a number of native carnivores, including the fossa. We also found some domestic dogs, which is a concern. Not as many as in some other national parks, but they're always the carnivore folks are always looking out for the domestic dogs, because domestic dogs can transfer diseases to native carnivores. So that's a concern, but we were surprised by the number of carnivore species that we found and the diversity, and that suggests to us that this reserve is doing pretty well, which is what we expected.
I just have a quick note. Fossa are, they look kind of cat-like, maybe kind of a bobcat-esque size. But they're actually closer related to weasels, I believe. But they're really cool. They have joints that will actually turn kind of all the way around. So they will climb up and down the trees in order to hunt the lemurs. Obviously working with lemurs, we don't like the idea of fossa, but at the same time, they're a really incredibly evolved species. And if anybody is interested in them, I would definitely go ahead and look them up and look up videos of them in the trees, because it's really cool.
And it kind of speaks to the importance of biodiversity as well. Fossa rely on these lemurs as a food source, and with lemurs being so at risk for extinction, it threatens the whole habitat. We are running short on time, but I think we have time for one more question. This one is from Rebecca. What is everyone's favorite species of lemur?
Just going off of the species of lemur that I've seen or worked with, my favorite is definitely going to have to be either the mongoose lemur or the red ruffs. I would probably lean more towards the mongoose lemurs, just because they are so energetic and they have great personalities. When we do put enrichment in, just instantly putting it in, they are so enthused and so active. But they're so small too as well, so they're really cute. But just their energy and their personalities is probably what really hits home for me.
I am the same. Out of the species I've worked with, my favorite is absolutely the mongoose lemurs. I like to describe them as little busybodies. They are very nosy, they're very curious, they have to know what you're doing, whether you're just walking by or you're in their enclosure. We have one particular female, her name is Kikili, and if you have something in your pocket, she's gonna pull it out because she has to check it out. And then she'll sniff it, and then she's not interested, and then she'll throw it on the floor. But as a whole, they're so much fun. Like Lauren said, they're very energetic. We actually have, I think we're 16 of them right now. I say that because we just had a couple of transfers, but we have the most mongoose lemurs at any one facility. So it's easy for us to say they're our favorite because we have a lot of them and we work with a lot of them. And they really they pull on your heartstrings.
I love mongoose lemurs too, especially since they've become very hard to find in Madagascar, as we're learning, which really speaks to the importance of managed breeding programs like what we have here. But I have to say my favorite is the silky sifaka lemur, because during one of our biomedical studies, we actually captured some and I was able to hold them. And once you hold them, it's over. You're buds for life. So yeah.
So this hour flew by. I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. I always do whenever all four of us are in the room together. And I know we didn't get a chance to answer everyone's question today, but I really encourage you to pop over to our website at lemurreserve.org. There's a lot of really great information there, and a lot more to learn. And despite everyone's favorite lemur being a mongoose lemur, there are over 100 species of lemur in Madagascar, so there's a lot to love. But I do want to take a minute to remind everybody that we are in the middle of our virtual World Lemur Festival, and there's still a lot of really great activities to get involved. We have a digital escape room on our website, so you can try to win a free prize. So that's still up. We have a lot of really great kids crafts. You can make your own lemur masks. And we also have, these are all print at home activities. We have these lovely lemur puppets that you can make out of a paper bag. So again, head over to our website. There's a lot of really, really great materials that we'd love to share with you guys. And the best part is it's all free. We want to raise awareness for lemurs and do the best we can to get the message out far and wide. And as we wrap up here, I want to give a huge thank you to our panel of experts. As we've heard, they have a lot of hats to wear here at LCF, and taking the time out of their day to come chat with us is a really, really special treat. And of course, I want to thank everybody who attended today. You guys are the real heroes, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without your help and support. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully someday we can meet in person. But until then, thank you and have a really, really great afternoon. Thanks, everyone.